Hello everybody, my name is Brady and I am a 19th century American historian and we are back with another React video. Today we're going to be doing more salmonella. The video is The Wild World of Inuit Folklore, which should be fun. Folklore, culture. We're getting into anthropology here, which it's a perfect subject for anthropology, but if you do history, you get into all the other social sciences, social studies, so it's a natural subject to be curious about. Inuits are interesting. I don't know that much about them. You may know them better as Eskimos. Inuit is the proper term. It's the politically correct term, but sometimes if you're like, hey, I'm talking about Inuits to this invisible person over here, they'll be like, I don't know who you're talking about. And you'll be like, Eskimos. And they'll be like, oh, that's who you're talking about. Now I have an image in my head. So it's one of those unfortunate things where it's a little extra effort to be politically correct on there. This should be fun, though. I'd imagine if it's a salmonella video, their culture must be absolutely mad. So it should be cool. Let's get started.
Hey kids, from clubbing seals to inventing new compound nouns for snow, nobody knows how to kick it quite like the Inuit. Of course, if you're a close-minded tree dweller like me, you might initially think that they can't be that good at storytelling, given that they only know about like 6 things. But that's not true. They've actually got an incredibly complex and fascinating oral tradition. You could ask one about it, there's plenty of these guys around today, but they've got Jesus and microwaves and shit, and that's boring.
That is one of those things that people often make mistakes on. They imagine these depictions of cultures that are totally outdated, and not even just with the Inuit. We'll talk about like all these Native American tribes, and they get this same image, this same stereotypical Indian image. And then we have a bunch of like African countries that have this same thing. They are hella modernized in a lot of ways, but they're still stuck with this image.
I want to talk about the stuff from before missionaries came and sent their miserable way of life to a farm upstate. So instead, let a 20-year-old college kid who's never lived outside of Delaware tell you all about it. Obvious disclaimer, Inuits are super diverse. Calling a caribou Inuit a copper Inuit is like calling a copper caribou a caribou caribou. Sure, they both look the same from far away, but when a thunderstorm hits, you better know which one to hide under. As such, while most of the following can be applied in broad terms to most Inuits, the little details come from a variety of subcultures that don't necessarily represent the whole. Got it, swank.
He's actually being very responsible here. I like that he's being like, oh, this is such a pain, because sometimes that's how it feels. When you get bogged down in the nuance of things, sometimes it's just easier to generalize. And if you have to generalize, be upfront. Let them know you are generalizing here. What I'm saying may not reflect everything, but it does exist in some capacity. If you can be specific, that's even better. But I actually think, despite the fact that he's laying this out in a way that's like, I don't want to deal with all this, he's putting the extra effort to let you know this is far more complicated than I'm letting on, which is really cool.
Now, a lot of the world's faiths are centered around bringing people together and inspiring them with stories and images of the divine, so as to give them a wider sense of purpose here on Earth. That's all well and good, but that whole search for greater meaning thing only really comes into play once your original purpose of making sure you don't die is pretty much figured out. Not so for the Inuit. You see, it ain't so easy living in a place where plants can't grow and being naked for an hour means certain death. As such, their beliefs were a little more practical, being more so geared towards fostering the paranoid levels of fear required to survive in such a hostile environment. For example, the Inuit believed that everyone has a sort of life force or soul, what they called anirnik, and like plenty of religions, they believed it lived on after death and could...
That's interesting. And yeah, I'm gonna go back and get this whole thing when he's done, but the concept of the soul being so universal from culture to culture is very interesting. I've seen people use this as justification. Well, of course the soul exists. All humans are aware of it. These cultures that are totally disconnected have similar themes in their religious traditions and stuff. So how could it not be real? It's a weird argument, but it does at least say something about human psychology, that we come up with very different ideas. Even groups that are completely isolated from one another, had no influence upon one another, can come up with very similar ideas when it comes to religion, and the soul is a very common concept. I mean, the idea of living on beyond death, I think that's natural because you don't want to die. Death is uncomfortable. You don't want to think about it too much. It's good to give you a reason to hope for the future. So it's not really surprising that it exists in different cultures, but there are other elements that definitely do carry on from culture to culture that didn't seem to be influenced by one another, and I think that's one of the fun parts of anthropology.
Soul, what they called anirnik. For example, the Inuit believed that everyone has a sort of life force or soul, what they called anirnik, and like plenty of religions, they believed it lived on after death and could meddle in the world of mortals. But while most cultures regard animals as being spiritually inferior meat puppets, to the Inuits, a creature's soul is just as powerful and vengeful as that of a person. And like I said, up there in the Arctic, not much greenery in the scenery, so they basically had no choice but to devour nothing but souls every single day. And wouldn't you know it, souls don't much care for getting ate.
So that's interesting because their religion would have to, religion, cultural, whatever you really want to call it, it would have to justify this system in which they have no choice but to devour things whose soul has equal value to them. So it's like one of those things where the religion is birthed from the circumstances, and that seems to be where a lot of religion comes from. It seems very rare that a religion will completely go and like just entirely against the culture in which it is established. I know that's not necessarily anything groundbreaking to say, but sometimes these simple things need to be observed.
The Inuit made sure to follow a complex set of guidelines on how to placate their prey in the afterlife, lest the pissed-off ghost of that Arctic tern whispers sweet nothings into a polar bear's ears and turns your whole village into a big Japanese flag by sunrise. Here's a few. If you kill something, make sure you eat it all. Just as an American who doesn't clean his plate doesn't get dessert, an Inuit who doesn't eat all his walrus doesn't get any more walrus. Ever. Till they starve. If you kill a polar bear, make sure to point its head towards the direction it came from so it can find its way home more easily. If you pull a seal out of the water, give him some fresh water so he's not thirsty when you bash his brain in. Also, its spirit lives in its bladder, so make sure to hold on to it until the yearly bladder festival, where everyone...
We'll get into the bladder fester. I need to hear about that, of course. This comes from this reminds me of conversation I've had about hunting and kind of a culture around hunting where some of the people who appreciate wildlife the most seem to be the people who like hunting the most, which is mad to me. I've never had to hunt for my own food. I'm not going to judge anybody who hunts for their own food. I appreciate that other people do that for me. I am weak in spirit in that sense. But it seems like a lot of people who are into that stuff have this deep appreciation for wildlife, for nature, and that sort of stuff. And it's something that I don't understand in any concrete sense, but I've had some very interesting conversations about that stuff. You think of like Teddy Roosevelt or something. The guy was huge into hunting, but God, did he love nature. So maybe it's a similar thing here. Where there is a religion built around the hunting, and it gives them a greater appreciation for them. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here.
So its spirit lives in its bladder, so make sure to hold on to it until the yearly bladder festival, where everyone gets together, blows up their bladders like balloons, and throws them out to sea so they can reincarnate into new seals. These taboos aren't all just about hunting, though. For some reason, there's a load of them about pregnancy. Don't make fun of people's facial features, or else the baby will have the same features. Don't walk backwards, or else the baby will come out backwards. Dangerous. Face your bed towards a doorway, or it'll come out sideways. Also dangerous. Don't wrap rope around your hand, or it'll come out with the umbilical cord around its neck. Extremely dangerous. Don't drink directly from a soup bowl, or it'll come out with dark skin. Not touching that one. Don't put a bowl on your head, or else it'll be wearing the placenta like a hat. Too hilarious. And the list goes on. Central.
I mean, come on, that's hilarious. that dark skin one was a little bit weird. I feel like he says he's not touching that one, but that's the one I want to be elaborated upon a little bit more. But okay, I guess I'm not gonna get that. I'll have to look into his sources. I know primarily he seems to use Wikipedia and stuff, but sometimes he'll put sources in the description when I'm lucky.
Central to the consequences of breaking a lot of these rules is the being known as Sedna. The story behind Sedna varies pretty wildly between different groups of Inuits, but here's the gist of it. She was once a young girl who pissed everyone off, either by being annoying, or eating too much food, or rejecting an arranged marriage, or marrying a dog for some reason. So her father throws her out of a kayak, and when she tries to get back in, he chops off all her fingers. The sea goddess sees this, furrows her long floppy seaweed brow, does a sassy snap, and the girl turns into an immortal sea witch, while her disembodied fingers turn into the first seals. And to this day, Sedna sits at the bottom of the ocean, growing new fingers which promptly fall off and turn into all the world's seal lions and narwhalruses. That is until someone goofs up in some small arbitrary fashion like, "Yo, Sedna, bad news. I just caught a guy chewing a piece of blubber. What's wrong with that?" Well, he wasn't looking north while he did it. Are you fucking kidding me? In his defense, he was standing right on the pole, so he literally couldn't look anywhere but south. He could have moved! That...
Okay, sorry, I just need a second here. Before he gets... I'm gonna go back to the beginning of that bit. So, I wonder if Sedna actually looks like that or not. Hold on. I want to Google this. I will be right back. I want to see if there are any depictions of Sedna, and if it really is so similar to, like, this, like, kind of mermaid-like creature that Sam is showing here. So I did a quick Google search, and there's a million pictures, and a lot of them are different, but generally, yeah, it does kind of look like a mermaid in general. Like, he says sea witch, and he depicts her, like, in a not so attractive fashion, and I expected to see that. And I'm sure maybe I could find depictions like that, but yeah, it just kind of seems like a stereotypical mermaid, and it makes me think, is that the result of, like, more modern, because a lot of the pictures looked like they were a little bit newer, but maybe if I looked a little harder, I could find something a little bit more like this sea witch concept that he's throwing at me.
Small arbitrary fashion like, "Yo, Sedna, bad news. I just caught a guy chewing a piece of blubber. What's wrong with that?" Well, he wasn't looking north while he did it. Are you fucking kidding me? In his defense, he was standing right on the pole, so he literally couldn't look anywhere but south. He could have moved! That's it! No more fingy foods for 3 moons! Okay. Another fun creation myth is how the moon and sun came to be. So long ago, there were these two siblings named Melina and Iningin. The two got along just fine as kids, but as the two got older, they were put into their respective genders' living areas and saw each other less and less. Then one day, Iningin got the feeling that his lower nose was in dire need of some Eskimo kisses. So that night, he snuck into the women's lodge, saw his sister, thought, I pick that one, and proceeded to do, unspeakable things, technically becoming his own Eskimo brother. But it was too dark at the time for Melina to tell what happened. The next night, Ningin's like, "I'll fucking do it again." Only this time, Melina smears soot all over his face. So later, she goes over to the men's lodges, and who has crap all over his face but her brother? This makes her so mad that she cuts off her own breasts with a knife, puts them in a bowl, throws them at Ningin, and says, "If you enjoy me so much, then here, eat 'em. Go ahead, eat my disembodied, quivering titties." She runs off into the night with a torch, and Iningin is really remorseful or horny or something, so he chases after her with his own torch, and they end up running so fast that they took off like a plane into the sky, and Melina became the sun while Iningin became the moon. Excuse me?
Dude, that is the worst sun origin story I've ever heard in my life. Like, I've heard a million stories where like, a main character becomes like the moon or the sun or whatever like that, and like I've heard many different religions that try to explain how the moon and sun came about. That is by far the worst story I've ever heard of that style. That's absolutely terrible.
Me, Mrs. Elder, if the sun and moon didn't exist yet, how did he do that stuff at night when there was no night? Now, some
think about it,
details of the
dude.
story are tied into real-world phenomena. Some say that an Ingan tripped and messed up his torch, which is why the moon is so dim. And the moon cycles are because he gets really skinny from chasing after her for so long. And the new moon is when he goes away for a few days to hunt seals so he can fatten back up. But here's the kicker. Nobody ever
That's kinda
explains
funny.
what the whole lopping off her tits part was supposed to represent. That's entirely just creative liberty. Just like, yes, that's why the sun doesn't have tits. Probably for the best it doesn't, otherwise half the population will be blind by now, and worse, it's the half that makes up 85% of my viewer base. So you know what? Thanks for slicing and dicing them tea towels, Melina. I kinda owe you my career. But as for you,
Very good.
your eyes are valuable. You should treat them to something more substantial and informative. Like, say, a library of high-quality exclusive documentaries. Sponsor time. Curiosity Stream was
Curiosity
founded
Stream,
by
got
the
it. So I'm going to play through the ad, as I do, and we will talk afterwards.
dude behind the Discovery Channel, and it's great for someone like me who horks down any useless knowledge he sees, like the brave gators keeping America's sewers free of rats. And with thousands of titles, a lot of which are Curiosity Stream exclusives, it's hard not to find something that interests you. Here's a gem I watched recently: The Kingdom: How Fungi Made Our World. Mushrooms are honestly like if you told aliens about Earth and they tried their best to recreate what they thought plants were. Real wild stuff. You can try Curiosity Stream for absolutely free if you sign up at curiositystream.com/salmonella and use promo code salmonella during the sign-up process. Also, signing up for a year of Curiosity Stream will now give you Nebula for free. What's Nebula? Glad I asked. A bunch of independent creators that I may or may not associate with.
Do I know anybody on here? Oh, it's Boy in a Band. Cool. I didn't know he was on there. Yeah. I think that's Knowing Better. Oh, that's the History Buffs dude. He like reviews history movies and stuff. That's dope. Oh, Legal. Yes, I knew he was on there. Okay.
With in some
Sorry.
way decided to start their own streaming service, completely free of ads and full of content that can't be seen anywhere else. I hardly make content
Dope.
for my own channel, so God knows I couldn't muster up any Nebula exclusives. But here's some guys who have. If you like them, go check it out. Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Salmonella, and...
Why? Why would you do that? Oh, God. Are you okay? So that was fun. Like I've said in previous Salmonella videos, I always feel like when I walk away from these things, the last Salmonella video feels like my favorite. I don't know if this is one of those, but I really enjoyed the beginning. I think he was very good at setting this up, and I really appreciated kind of his responsible regard for the diversity of their culture, which is something he doesn't have to do. He goes out of his way to be offensive about stuff. Like, I'm not going to be mad at Salmonella for making an offensive joke or overgeneralizing something, but he actually did a very good job with that. That moon and sun story, though, that's bull. Come on. Like, it's like they tried to make the worst moon and sun origin story. Like, that's awful. But it was funny. It was very funny, and it was perfect for his video, but I don't know what they're doing there. Like, whoever came up with that one could have done better. I want to find if they have, like, an official version of this story written down, but it's probably such an old story that it's subject to a lot of change over time, so that any written version probably is not an exact representation of the original version, so I don't even know what to go with. That was fun. That was a fun video. It was a very fun video. Let me know if there's any other Salmonella videos or any other videos you want me to check out. Put them in the comment section below. Like this video if you like this video. Subscribe for more every single day. And I think that's about it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, bye.